Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jake at thatfitfriend.com, and today I'll be reviewing the On Cloud 6. So 3 things to like with this shoe is number one, On has reworked the fit of this model compared to the On Cloud 5. So one of my major gripes, and I know many of you who have tried the On Cloud 5 is that it was way too narrow through the forefoot and through the midfoot, and the upper volume could feel a little bit low. The On Cloud 6 has been reworked in the sense of giving it a wider platform, and the upper volume has been increased. So I think this is going to give this shoe a much more inclusive fit for wider feet, slightly flatter feet, and for folks who have higher insteps and need a little bit more volume through their upper. I have compared this shoe directly to the On Cloud 5. I'm going to link that video up there, and I talk about the exact measurement differences between these shoes, but overall this shoe I think should work for a wider range of foot anatomies, which I think is a good thing for getting this shoe to be comfortable on multiple types of feet. The second thing to like with this shoe is On has reworked the midsole in this model. So in the On Cloud 5, one of my issues with that shoe too was how many rocks that shoe would pick up. It's kind of one of those things that comes with shoes like this that have these breaks in the midsole. You get it with other On models, you get it with the Nike Free Metcon models, but with this shoe, they've actually decreased the divots up here in the forefoot, which I personally like because if you get a rock in your shoe, if you get it here deep into the midfoot, not the biggest deal. If you get in the forefoot, it can be pretty annoying, and I have yet to have issues here with the forefoot when walking in rocky terrains. Now, these do still pick up rocks, and I will talk about that in my cons, but the forefoot being reworked to make these cuts a little bit shallower, I think was a really good move to prevent how many rocks you can pick up when wearing this shoe outdoors. The third thing to like with this shoe is its overall comfort. The Cloud Tech midsole still feels as soft as the Cloud 5 did, despite having slightly shallower divots. Also, with the reworked fit, I think this shoe just gives you more space, gives your feet a little bit more room to breathe. So if you like a slightly more spacious shoe for all day wear, for walking, for standing around, this model I think will deliver a better fit. We also have a reworked boot back here, so it's a little bit easier to get on and off as well compared to the On Cloud 5, which with its narrower fit could be a little bit of an issue to slide it on and off. This model does a lot better. So from an overall comfort standpoint and just ride comfort standpoint, this model does a really good job. But now let's talk about a few cons that I have with the Cloud 6. All right, so 3 cons that I have with this model is they are still gonna pick up rocks, and that's just gonna be one of those things that we have to accept. I literally just got back in from my last walk before I went to test these, and I did not check both midsoles in these models, and I wanted to see if I have a rock, and lo and behold, we have a rock. So again, while the forefoot is definitely better for that with the midsole rework, these will still pick up rocks. If you're wearing them outdoors, expect that. It is pretty stereotypical with On shoes with these big breaks here with the midsole. So you're not gonna be scotch-free there if that was something that really irked you with the On Cloud 5. The second con that I have with this model is with the On Cloud 5, while they can last a while, their durability, especially long-term, can be pretty variable. And where those issues can typically arise with these models is up here in the forefoot or on the upper. I think with the increased upper volume, that will be less of an issue here with the 6. But another area where you can get some breakdown is here at the midsole where it meets the ground. And so if you scuff, for example, these shoes, they will show wear pretty quickly. So for example, I was walking my dog the other day and he turned and I went to go pivot with him and I scuffed the forefoot here on my right shoe. And you already have foam here starting to pull away and lip, and it just kind of looks weird, so I had to pick it off, and it was all black because of the asphalt. So it is one of those things to keep in mind that when you're getting the On Cloud 6 with its lightweight construction, with the foam being so close to the ground here on the lateral and medial forefoot and through the midfoot, if you're wearing them a lot on concrete and you shuffle your feet, pick your feet up. I'm telling you, you're gonna break this shoe down really quickly, and I do not want you to come back to this video and yell at me because you did that. But long-term durability of the Cloud 6, I feel like will be similar to the 5. I do think the upper and the forefoot should hopefully be better long-term, but when it comes to the midsole, I would expect similar results that you had with the 5, with the 6, especially if you wear them outdoors a lot. The third con that I could see some folks having with the Cloud 6 is that with the reworked upper construction and the more spacious fit, if you have a super narrow heel, you might actually find that you need to either swap in the traditional laces to get a tighter fit through the midfoot to lock your foot down, or you might just need to pass on the shoe. I have a bit of room here at the back of my heel in the sense of just a little bit more medial and lateral room when I'm moving my legs laterally. And I feel like if you have a narrower heel and you often have to battle boots of your shoes and getting that nice security, that could be problematic for you in this shoe with the speed lacing, but I do feel like that'll be a pretty niche anatomy that we'll have that issue with. So despite this shoe having a more inclusive fit, I don't think it's gonna be foolproof completely for every foot anatomy. But now let's talk about the performance of the Cloud 6. To cover the performance of the On Cloud 6, I'll discuss how this shoe does for training, daily wear, and just general comfort. I'm not gonna talk about how they do for running. I would not suggest running in the shoe, and if you do, probably try to limit that performance if you want them to last. But let's talk training first. Now, I am not saying to buy this shoe for working out, but how I look at this shoe is that if you're somebody that wants that all-in-one shoe that you can wear, for example, if you're traveling for work or for pleasure and you want a shoe that you can just kind of put on for hotel workouts, this model will get the job done. So I do want to talk to some thresholds in which I feel like this shoe will start to fall short in that context. Now, when it comes to free weight training, anything above 225 pounds, you're going to compress this CloudTech midsole. So you will want to keep your free weight workouts a little bit lighter with the barbell. And then when it comes to machine work, similarly, you'll get a decent grip with this, but for heavier leg presses and hack squats, you will have some compression in this shoe. And with this speed lacing system, if you're not using the traditional laces, you will slide a bit in the upper of this model. So definitely keep that in mind too, depending on how heavy you're going with machines. Now, when it comes to more casual stuff and more casual cross training, the shoe should do a decent job. The midsole moves pretty well. You also have that speedboard tech, which I believe is going to be very similar to what the Cloud X4 has. I cut that shoe in half. I'll link that video up there so you can kind of see what the speedboard is. It's basically like this TPU shank that runs through the midfoot, through the forefoot, and then back here in the heel to give you a bit more stability through the midfoot. And I do find that that helps with training in this shoe if you're going to use them for that. So for example, when doing split squats and lunges or any form of like jump rope, you do get a little bit more pop in this shoe and a nice stability through the midfoot. And it does give you enough stability to kind of get you through some lighter free weight workouts with dumbbells and kettlebells. So this model can work for some casual stuff, but I would not recommend buying them as your only training shoe. And I would definitely recommend capping your thresholds for some of your strength and power movements in this shoe due to the upper security and the compression of the CloudTech. Now, when it comes to walking, I found this shoe to be pretty comfortable. I think if you traditionally like a bit more rock in your shoes, you will enjoy this model. It has a good amount of toe spring. The heel makes it pretty easy to transition when walking. And the CloudTech midsole has a good level of compression, but enough stability, I think, to keep them comfortable for all day wear. And when standing around in them, I also like how they feel. You don't really sink into them too much, and I feel like with the wider platform, it definitely gives this shoe a bit more comfort from an all-day wear context. My feet don't feel like they're barking at me after 4 hours of wear, which was something that the On Cloud 5 did because of how narrow that midfoot and forefoot were. So overall, if you want this shoe for walking around, traveling, or wearing all day at work, for example, if you work retail or if you're a nurse, this I think could be a good option to explore, or at least try on in store and see how they feel for your foot. I do feel like with the wider platform and the more spacious upper, it definitely has leveled up this shoe's overall comfort. So when it comes to the price of this model, you can expect to pay $150. Now, is it worth it for this shoe? It's hit or miss, honestly. I feel like with the long-term durability for my super frugal folks out there, the durability of the midsole will be something that irks you. But if you're used to buying On shoes, or if 150 you don't really bat an eye at, I do feel like the price point for this shoe is pretty fair if you're going to rotate them with other shoes. They're very comfortable, and I do think they scratch that daily wear shoe itch. So when it comes to the sizing and fit of the On Cloud 6, now I traditionally wear a size 10 US shoe. I buy a 10 for all of my reviews. I have an E to double E width foot and a normal instep or normal arch. This model I feel like fits pretty dang true. I don't feel like I'm overly constricted in this model, so I do think if you have an E to double E width foot, you might be okay in this shoe compared to the On Cloud 5 that might have felt too snug for you. And so for my narrow and medium width feet, you should also be safe going true to size. Now, if you have an exceptionally flat foot and you don't like any arch, you may not resonate with this shoe. The taper here through the midfoot and the arch might irk you. And then also, if you have a 3E plus foot width, you may also want to buy these, and then keep in mind that you likely will have to return them because I'm not convinced you'll have enough upper volume in this shoe to give you a nice comfortable fit. So definitely keep that in mind if you have exceptionally wide feet. But I do think if you wore the On Cloud 5 and you were kind of on that borderline of just thinking they were a little bit too snug or too constricting, I would say give the On Cloud 6 a try. It does feel more spacious, and I think that will increase this shoe's ability to be comfortable for a wider range of foot anatomies, pun intended. All right, we're going over the weight, heel, toe drop, and insole in the On Cloud 6. For my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 10.10 ounces. The heel to toe drop of this shoe sits at 8 millimeters, and it does have a thin foam removable insole, and there's a lot of flexibility to it, so there isn't a really aggressive arch here, which is something I personally prefer with this model and giving it a better fit. All right, so now let's go over the construction of the On Cloud 6. Up here on the forefoot, we have an extended outsole layer that wraps up, and then looking at the midsole of this shoe, we have that Cloud tech that runs throughout the entirety of this shoe. It has remained relatively consistent with the On Cloud 5 regarding its overall density and its softness, But again, there has been that rework to be a little bit more shallow up here in the forefoot with its divots here. It doesn't go as deep as you can see compared to the On Cloud 5. And then looking at the outsole while we're here, we have some rubber tread up here on the forefoot. We have exposed foam through the midfoot and then rubber tread back here in the heel. This does a pretty good job with grip, but again, if you get close enough to the ground, you scuff, you will start to tear up this CloudTech midsole. So try to not rub the lateral or medial side of your shoe because you will break that down on any form of asphalt, concrete, or anything that's going to create a bunch of friction. You also have that speedboard tech here in this model. That's this TPU layer here that helps give the midfoot a bit more stability. Looking at the upper of the shoe, you have a breathable mesh that runs throughout the forefoot into the midfoot here. You have some On branding on the lateral and medial side of the midfoot, and then over here on the tongue. The tongue does have a gusset, and this model comes with the speed lacing system and traditional laces. So if you want to swap this out for traditional laces, you can do that. And you also have some textile overlays running over the forefoot and the midfoot in this shoe. The heel has also been reworked, so it does have a bit more space, and the heel honestly feels, I think, a little bit more rigid, which is great because if you slide these on and you pop this heel down, this does come back up pretty fast. So I do like that. I think it should actually prolong the boot's health in this model. Now, if you want to hedge your bets, just try to put them on normally. You won't collapse the heel here. And again, this model does have that removable foam insole. But if you have additional questions on this shoe's construction or something that I missed, drop a comment down below. All right, now let's answer the question, would I buy these again? Honestly, I would. I was not the biggest fan of the On Cloud 5 due to their fit. This model feels a lot more comfortable. It's a very easy shoe to just slip on and off. Like these have been my go-to lately for dog walks when I just want that very casual shoe or for running errands. So I do like them for that. Do I love the midsole durability? No, but that's often a gripe I have with On shoes and I've just kind of come to expect it at this point. But if you have additional questions on the On Cloud 6 and if you should go for it or go with the On Cloud 5 or go with a different shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.